Now, the debt ceiling bill that the president is hoping to negotiate with Speaker McCarthy, not his only challenge in avoiding a fiscal disaster. Could the price of a deal with Republicans be too steep for progressives on Capitol Hill, potentially opening a rift with the White House heading into an election year? And joining me now is Jen Psaki, host of MSNBC's Inside with Jen Psaki on Sunday, and a former Biden White House press secretary, which is all of your insides. I mean, the fact that you were the State Department spokeswoman, too. I mean, you've done it all.
I've been in a lot of rooms, Andrea, for whatever that's worth, yes.
You learned so much along the way. So President Biden now at a summit, you've been to these G7s, projecting strength, against Russia, in favor of Ukraine. We heard the F-16 thing is being cleared up, but it will take at least 4 months to train these pilots. And then China sitting out there, holding their own summit. And back home, he's got these negotiations, and everything depends on this. Economic strength of the U.S., the recession. And, you've got members. I interviewed Bob Good, a House member, yesterday, and his strong belief is that default is not such a big deal.
I mean, they are clearly not people who have attended these summits, as you said. And Susan Glasser wrote a really great piece about this today. What's important for people to understand is that when the president of the United States is at a summit, or even when he's not, all of these world leaders and their teams are watching what's happening in the United States. Is democracy going to last? Are they going to default? All of that makes the United States look weak on the world stage. And if you're China, you're rooting for a default, right, for them. So for the president, this is about, he's there to project strength. The United States is back at the table, but these negotiations, this being tricky and unresolved at home, is not great. And that's important for people, Republicans, Democrats, to really understand.
And we've been so focused on the House all along and House progressives, keeping Democrats together. But you have 11 senators signing legislation, signing a letter, rather, to the president that he should just do it on his own. The 14th Amendment. He's backed up by Lawrence Tribe now, constitutional scholar who had been in the other camp, back in 2011. And more senators could come on board, and then they'd really have a problem if they can't get it through the Senate.
That's right. And the 14th Amendment has never been invoked before for these purposes. That's important to know. The challenge here is also the timeline, because there will be no doubt legal challenges if the president were to invoke the 14th Amendment. But I think if you're any of these senators who signed this letter, or many others in Congress, you're thinking, we don't want to do this again. Can we just have another option instead of having Kevin McCarthy and the right wing of the Republican Party hold us hostage? So I suspect it will be an option out there for some time, but it's never been done before. Legal challenges would be an issue, and the timeline's a little tricky, but it seems like the White House is at least taking a look at it, even as they are really focused on the negotiation.
And saying that we would consider it for a future negotiation, but we've got to do this now, because what Janet Yellen is saying is you don't have the time to litigate this.
There's not the timeline, exactly. Now, the fact that, obviously today one of the top negotiators for Kevin McCarthy came out and said we need to pause, that may feel to everybody like, oh my gosh, we're barreling towards a default. That's the only thing that's going to happen. I will tell you, having sat in the room for a lot of these negotiations or being a part of the White House team, that's not necessarily what's going to happen. Sometimes there are pauses where it looks like everything is going to explode and not come back together, and it does. And the Democrats in the White House have a big challenge right now because of these work requirements and the response from many progressives very vocally about how problematic accurately that would be for so many people who benefit from a lot of these benefits that those work requirements would be put on.
I'm worried that the president is going to compromise too much. Let's talk also about the presidential race. And Tim Scott filing his papers. He's going to make the formal announcement on Monday. And you did an interview with Senator Cory Booker and found that there is an unusual, maybe not what you wouldn't expect, but they worked together on the gun law that didn't quite come together. And there's a connection there.
There is. They work together on police reform. As Senator Booker said during the interview, they are two tall, bald, black guys. So that is a bond they have. Those are his words, not mine. And he is somebody that he feels is underestimated.
So let's hear part of your interview, which is going to play on Sunday.
You have a friendship with Senator Tim Scott. You've talked about someone you've said you loved.
Look, I have friendships with Tim Scott, Dan Sullivan. I can go through a lot of Republicans that I've formed legitimately good friendships here. And that's the way you get things done, is not by vilifying or demonizing people you disagree with, but finding chords of common humanity. And Tim is a guy that we have a lot of shared life experiences. Two big, bald, black guys growing up in America have had similar experiences that are bad, run-ins with police officers, and similar experiences that are good, growing up in really good black churches.
What should people who are intrigued by his presidential aspirations, shall we call them, know about him? I mean, you know him on a personal level.
I think that as I look at this Republican field, he may be one of those people that is underestimated.
Really interesting, John, because, I mean, that's such a revealing interview. What else did you talk about with Senator Booker?
We really spanned the gamut, Andrea. We talked about courts and court reform. We talked about the debt limit. We also talked a lot about the broken food system. He's on the Agricultural Committee, which is really surprising to people as the former mayor of Newark, who is also a vegan. We talked also about mental health and how what he feels needs to be done to address the mental health crisis in the country. We went for a run, so that was a part of our interview as well. But he is someone, Andrea, who is very positive and optimistic. That didn't take when he ran for president, but he does present something that's a little different from a lot of the negativity people hear about and see in politics these days.
Does he think he might run again himself?
I did ask him that question, and I will tell you he certainly left the door open to something in the future.
Can't wait to see this interview and all the rest of your show. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Andrea, so much.